Hello everyone, Kurt Holford here, and welcome back to another episode from Holford Labs. Today we continue on with the sword and armored section, and we're going to be looking at another play here that leads to a throw. Now again, this is one of those types of situations here where again, everything up beforehand, we've just seen what we can do at this crossing, and everything else becomes a play action off of this one crossing and what the person's response is. So part of the thing that we look at here when it comes down to this type of categorical, algorithm is what are you trying to do and how have you size up an opponent to make the strike that you're doing effective in action. So we're going to look at that today here as far as one more way to be able to use the sword, and also what happens maybe if I lose the point here or the case here, what else can I do in that striking, and options that flow from that. But before we get into that, please don't forget, if you're new to the channel, like, subscribe, and share with a friend out there. And please leave a comment below. We'd love to have you on this journey of the 14th century practice of arms, and that's not possible without viewers like you. So please join us on this journey. And to my viewers and subscribers, thank you so much for stopping by as always, and for the support that you've shown me over the years. I greatly appreciate that, and I look forward to doing more work with you in the future. With that being the case here, let's take a look at this next play, another option about what happens if we stick from that first crossing of armor into the socket points of the armpit, and how it turns into a throw.
So this next one we have here is going to be talking about the usage of, again, the same cross we've talked about here, but to get to a throw that may come after or before the thrusting to the body. So the image I'm specifically talking about is this one right here. And as we can tell, the opponent is once again holding the sword in the extended sword position. So the sword in two hands at the handle. The other person, however, the scholar, is in the sword, the armored sword or half-swording position. This whole play right here has a couple of ways in which it might be happening, which once again, it gives us indication about why we might keep the hand low, because in going high we might lose control of certain things right here, and also how we can use the body to cause this throw. So we're looking at all of that. So to begin with, I'm going to be utilizing, in this case right here, the crochet bastage. Again, it could be either way, it doesn't matter, but I'm just using this right here. Brandy comes in with a shot, offline, and then I have the thrust that's right here. Now, a couple things can happen. I'm a little bit far away here as far as from where my intended target is. So if I can't quite get the sword behind her head or her throat area like I want to, like the image might show, but I have the ability to, when a crest come into and still stab the bicep. So the thing is, remember, because there is going to be a level of protection right there. Remember, like I said before, it doesn't mean that chainmail is not going to be ineffective. It just means that, as I hit the person, it's not going to be going through or rendering through right off the top. I still can poke right here. That might be enough to, she starts dislodging here, and as I turn, I put the blade to the throat here. Now I've got the throw into position. So the reason we're talking about that here is, once again, this is a commentary, I believe, the maestro is showing about in armor. Because, again, chainmail is effective for strikes and for anti-laceration. As I've said before, this is how I see it. But it doesn't mean for the type 15 or 15A at the time that do much against thrusts. But that also means I'm not going to go through her with the sword and soft bits of the body. So because we're going across the body here, we have the option first and foremost of cross stick. It hits her. Because the sword is low, I can now come up and find the throat and then tip over the leg. My leg here is low, you can tell. And all it has to do here is topple it over the leg, and she is thrown off to the side. So we'll switch sides here real fast so we can see it from the other side here. So from this crossing here, where it lined up, you thrust, boom. I either kick first, it starts turning away, and now I've stepped up. Again, my foot is right here. So as I start, I just move my hand for safety purposes. As I start to rotate, you can tell her body's going over my lead leg, which is a back throw, so she lands on top of her head and or neck. Both those are options right there. Now, from the lefty perspective on this, we can see that the things that Brandy was talking about before, maybe she has the point, but in this case, the point may not be available here. So if she indulges as a lefty, and walks through it, we can see the play is still done very similarly, but we may have to utilize the pommel. So on this side right here, she stabbed my right shoulder. This might make me go like this, leg behind, and now she has the overthrow on this. Like we said before, she can also still turn out with the pommel side. And now we have the same kind of setup right here, where as I start turning with this, I'm going down. Part of the reason why I think that guy is like this is because he's like, no, he's falling back, and he's put his sword back here as if to grab somebody. He's like, it's a bad throw, which might be the reason why for this. So both those options right there are systematically important to be able to get at the person.
So as you can see with the video, this is another situation where, again, like we talked last week about knowing the equipment level and what may or may not be effective in armor. It is another way of being able to recall what has happened out there and how that works across. So if you recall, last week we talked about the varying levels right here and how chainmail against the thrust may or may not actually be as effective, against a good pointed thrust on somebody as it may be against a strike or a slash. This week right here, we can tell that essentially in this case, we look at the image of it and the guy is kind of almost pulling back that's in defense. Now, as you saw in the video, personally, I think this is more along the lines of I've hit the person, they're pulled away from it, and now I have the ability to kind of keep that sword gathered, come across with my forearm in a way that allows me to dominate that person's dominant side arm, put the point across, and now I've got a way to be able to leverage the sword, utilizing going up again, crossing wise, to throw them over my leg. Remember, when it comes down to leg positioning, and I've talked about this consistently, in the fight of armor, just because your foot's not either forward or back, in front or back of the leg, it doesn't mean that all is not lost. Fighting is incredibly difficult when it comes down to it. And again, as people are shuffling around, it becomes a very hard thing to constrain and move into different positions as someone's trying to actively defend or strike you back. So I bring that up here because, again, this right here is another spot where one's avvisamento is important, because if we find our foot in the wrong spot, in the disadvantageous spot, in front, it doesn't mean that we can't do stuff there. It doesn't mean that we can't keep that point on and then step around to put the leg into place. It just means that effectively we have limiting factors right here that we may have to work with in getting into. Now, this right here, the guy that's having to throw against him, he's not wearing a helmet, so his head's kind of turned right here. And again, the blade is against his throat, which makes it even all the more nasty to tear him open. It kind of makes me think about the dagger remedy from the First Master, where coming up and using the point to kind of hit the jaw to turn the body around, because we're using a blade against flesh or whatever the case may be to turn this. I think this right here can be done with a helmet. In fact, I know it can be. It's just one of those things right here is like how much of the tip is available is a big part to consider when you're facing off with somebody. Because if you barely have anything in this, well, then you're not going to be able to do much as far as the throw is concerned, and you'd have to shift in motion to go back, which is very dangerous to do, especially as somebody's moving around. And you may be better off just kind of going into a grappling situation. So your hand placement on the blade is also significantly important in this. And depending on the type of sword that you have in your personal equipment, that might be a huge challenge. So that's really going to do it for this video here. Again, it's not a complicated play, but it is one that, once again, merits the observations of like, what does armor actually do for us in the body? How does it work here in conjunct with it? And what are some other factors that we may not be thinking about when it comes down to making these plays? Again, chainmail. Like I've said before, and I keep harping on this because I think it's a big part about this whole thing, because it goes back to Fiore's advice. Look at the person, assess them. Do they take up a position? And then assess yourself. This is the basic, my quick down and dirty of it all. So if I'm in armor, do they have a helmet? Check. Do they have a visor? No. Okay, face shots are open. Are they wearing chainmail? Yes. Do they have full falls? Yes. So now these all tell me that thrusting and everything else may be difficult for me to find. I have to have better accuracy. All these things right here make it into what you may be facing against and how else to make certain plays available. So As always, until I see you out there, please everybody stay safe out there, train well, and fight on. I'll see you all soon.